bring this meeting to order. We will be tabling our closed session for the moment here. This will allow us on our regular business meeting to have more time for our Miller presentation tonight. Moving on to our regular session meeting. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call. We are all present except for Joe DePola and Vice President Krumchuk tonight. She won't be with us. And I know that Mr. DePola may be a few minutes late. And here he is. Notice to the public. Any member of the public wishing to address the governing board on the topic within the subject matter jurisdiction of the district, but not on the agenda, may do so during the public comment period identified in the agenda. By law, subjects are not on the agenda cannot be acted upon by the board except for briefly respond, clarify, refer to staff for review and presentation in a future meeting. The board president will recognize you for the public comment on the matters on the agenda at the appropriate time. Any correspondence?
None to report.
Moving on to our consent agenda. Before we approve our consent agenda, we will be also tabling item 10A and 10B as there's not a complete information to make those presentations to the board at this time.
Are we doing closed session?
We are not doing closed session.
I would make a request that we do closed session.
We had just passed that. What would be the reason you want closed session as the evaluation is not ready?
Vanessa contract, the anniversary is September 17th, and we won't have another meeting before then.
We are having a special meeting to suggest the items that are being tabled under old business, and we'll also take care of the evaluation process at that time as well.
Okay, so we'll do that approximately when?
This will be on the next school board first meeting, which will be the Wednesday right before our school board meeting in September.
That will be too late. We need to, I would move that we have a special meeting before that time.
Vanessa, will our documents for those two items be ready by then?
Yes.
Before September?
Before September, yes.
We have it next week?
I
So
can.
it's too late because,
Vanessa's contract, the anniversary date is September 17th, and I would rather have the discussion in closed session, but essentially we need to have a closed session discussion before that anniversary occurs, and we need to have it at least 2 or 3 weeks before that anniversary occurs.
Okay. Upon Joe's request, can we schedule a special meeting prior to September?
Okay.
Thank you. Could I get a motion to table?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Since that item was on the agenda for the 24th of July, it was on the prior agenda item as well, and since no additional documents were added for that, is it possible to have a closed session on that now, a brief closed session?
I don't have any documentation support.
That's what I mean. Since there was no documentation on that item, so there's no issue with the public, and since it was agendized both on the 24th of July and also on this meeting, can't we have our closed session now on that? That's the only closed session item.
What I'm telling you is I don't have any documents for you to have that discussion.
We don't need any documents to have that discussion. That's the point. I don't need a document to have that discussion. So,
I don't want to go backwards on our agenda as we've already gone through.
well, can we have a closed session at the end of the meeting?
We can.
Okay,
Let's do that.
all right.
Okay, moving on. I requested the board to table the items 10A and 10B. Can I get a motion?
so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. First and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None. Okay, moving on to, excuse me. Now we got to approve our consent agenda. Got a motion to approve our consent agenda tonight with the items that were tabled.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None. Moving on to our public comment section. This is your public comment. Any persons wishing to speak to the board may do so at this time.
Good evening. I'm a bit concerned about your rearranging the agenda tonight because it was my understanding that I had heard about the Miller Building topic from staff, a member of staff who I thought wanted to be here for that discussion. Apparently now they were expecting you to be in closed session. Now you're not going to be. I'm afraid they're going to miss the discussion.
This discussion is also recorded unless you wanted to engage in it.
Let me also comment that my position, at least as far as this agenda item, would be that the board should defer action, and that means even though we would have the presentation, there would be opportunity before any action is taken for additional comments to occur at the next meeting, so that no one would be foreclosed from commenting before action occurs. It would be appropriate to go forward with the consultant with respect to his report and just to have him give the report. But I think that it would not be appropriate at this time, especially since we're taking things out of order and because the documentation wasn't necessarily available the full time, that we would not take action tonight but defer that to a later meeting. That's going to be what I'm going to move at if we get to that point.
And that's a good suggestion, Mr. DePola. As a week away or so, we should have a special meeting so we
Okay.
can conduct action at that point then.
Sure.
Any other further public comment? As I see none, moving on.
Let me also apologize to the public, at least, to the extent that we did miss the July meeting, and now we're rearranging a lot of the August meeting, and so things are a little discombobulated, and hopefully we'll get things back on track.
Yes, my apologies as well. Thank you, Mr. DePola. Any guest presentations?
None to report.
Your library report?
Okay, the first item on my librarian report is that I would like to inform the board that ADA construction will be starting tomorrow. We had to push it back a week because the concrete contractor was unavailable due to another job going long, so it will be starting tomorrow. Summer reading,
Could you please contact Byron and let him know that, and also invite him to communicate with the contractor to make sure everything's on the, correct to the specs?
sure.
You need Byron's number, I'll give it to you off the record. You got
I
it
do
anyway,
have,
don't you?
I
Okay.
have a few of his numbers, yeah. Next, I just wanted to report that our summer reading program, which closed in the middle of July, was very successful. We had over 350 children participating in the program. Well over a third of the participants met their reading goals, and thus they were invited to come to the summer reading party. We expanded the party this year from the previous year. We had arts and crafts. We had a Lawrence Hall of Science. We had the party out in the park. And so Lawrence Hall of Science came and did a really neat kind of science craft car type. And we had a 4-H petting zoo. We had the Friends of the Library giving out books. We had, because the theme of this year was reading is so delicious, which is about healthy eating and whatnot, we, instead of giving out the normal cake and pizza and whatnot, we had Jamba Juice come. And we had our iPads out, and we had what we called an interactive iPad petting zoo, which we had different apps and kind of guided it through the process. And that was a really big success. The children's librarian, Katrina Bergen, has started the process of reviving the Teen Advisory Board to expand volunteer opportunities for Dixon teens, as it is a requirement to have some sort of volunteer hours. She wanted to expand that, and they're in the process of revising that. We recently received a donation from Kiwanis, and the children's librarian will be presenting to Kiwanis on Monday evening regarding our programs for children and volunteer opportunities. We've recently added new resources. The one that I believe is going to best augment our services is the Britannica online library service. Instead of getting the encyclopedias, we have them online now, and we will be able to make those available in the schools as well for teachers to use. We have a magazine database called Zinio that people will be able to access from home, and also Ancestry.com, which will be available in the library, and that's part of our SNAP partnership. As for the month of July, over 7,000 books were checked out to patrons in the community. Our adult services librarian, Catherine Dunn, won a $2,500 grant called Pushing the Limits, and it's about promoting science literacy in rural areas, and we'll be having a book discussion group about a scientific topic, and be inviting local experts on the topic to come, and it's a really exciting new program. I did have a kind of a lengthy meeting yesterday with the SNAP consortium group, and one of the directions that they are wanting to take is that once the contract renewal comes up in January for our SNAP contract, a decision will be made to go to month-to-month services with Solano, pending direction towards a new governance structure. And that way we're not bound into a really long contract when Solano isn't, and Solano has expressed interest in continuing to pursue a new governance structure. Although I
I
think
thought Napa was gonna give us a proposal about,
Napa has decided to not go on to essentially rejoin the group on a month-to-month basis, and is committed to kind of working together with Solano.
but that doesn't mean that the fees are going down, though.
It doesn't necessarily mean that the fees are going down, but the thing that is that we're all waiting for is that we are waiting for a study that was put out for a new ILS, a new integrated library service catalog system. And that meeting will happen on September 20th with a report to which ILS system is recommended for SNAP to continue with. And that will dictate the direction of this, because that was really one of the major bones of contention for Napa County.
I
So,
thought the major bone of contention was the fact that we were paying for techs down at the Solano, at their main library.
yeah, and
And not really getting any service from those
yes,
techs.
and that is the main contention, but going to a hosted ILS will essentially make that point moot, as those techs will be no longer required to.
And does that mean Solano's gonna be reducing the fees at that point?
Well, Solano will no longer be governing. The goal is to not have Solano be part of the governance
Okay.
solution, to have us contract
So we'll be signing a new contract for the new
with
service?
with an outside entity, but the month-to-month contract will carry us through until we get everything set up.
And how long is it estimated that we'd go month to month with SNAP before we switch over?
They want to have a new ILS system live in a year from now, by August 30th of next year. But it's going to take some time, and that's why they want the wiggle room of a month-to-month contract, in case, the research and development and testing phases go a little bit longer than expected. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Moving on to our next topic, it should be new business. This is Miller Building Condition Survey presentation from PRNP Architects.
Good evening, my name is Paul Roberts. I've been an architect for about 30 years at my firm, San Vallejo. Delighted to be here tonight. I've actually served on the library board down in Vallejo for many, many years, and as chair for many years. Done libraries, Sassoon. In Vallejo, I've done master plan work, Winters, UC Berkeley, UC Irvine. One of my other specialties, though, that the firm does is a lot of historic restoration and preservation.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I've read your report, which I think is pretty thorough, but you're an architect and you normally don't estimate cost. A contractor does that. Is that a fair
Well,
statement? Or
no,
do you
that,
estimate costs?
we will also estimate costs, sometimes by ourselves and sometimes with a professional cost estimator.
do you have cost estimates for some of the work that you've described here, or?
No, because we're just completing this report. We did not put costs into it because the output of this report was to document the existing conditions, as well as to understand, there's kind of a maze in the Miller Building, and so we've actually done full measurements and drawn up both of the levels. So that's really the scope of this first part. This is a draft report, so it's appropriate that.
Okay, what I, at least in my discussions with our librarian, what I really wanted was an estimate of what it would cost to repair the building and whether it was repairable. I think we have your report here, but the real issue was whether it's cost effective to even undertake repairs, and so.
I can't answer that.
Okay, good, that's what I want to know.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right, so anyway, I do have a background in this building type as well as with old buildings.
Okay.
Getting to the meat of it, there's lots of issues with the Miller Building. I think probably everyone on the board is aware of it, and probably folks from the public too. There's extensive water damage on both levels. Electrical needs to be basically redone from scratch in the very near future. The top level is not served by HVAC right now. There's some wall furnaces, but they're spotty and probably aren't in working condition. Some of the utilities were off when we did our inspection. But the key issue that we found, to just jump to it, the building is very, very sound. The original building itself was very rich and had nice ornament. It's been altered significantly, I think, which everyone is aware of. But it's a reinforced concrete building, from 1908, and that shell, that structure, the framing, we went up into the attic. We couldn't crawl through all parts of it because there weren't any boards across it that would allow safe access, but we could see well into it. The roof framing looks to be in good condition, and the floor framing for the second floor is in good condition. So those are key issues that drive costs. When you have the shell in reasonably good condition, that's a big deal. To answer your question, which is it cost effective to renovate the building? The answer is very simple and unequivocal, yes.
That's what I was hoping to hear.
And that's as compared to building, new space. I mean, when you're redoing the mechanical, you're redoing the electrical, obviously we need a new roof and some changes to the roof design, although it's in reasonable, there's good slopes on it. It's just there's no secondary drains, things like that. So it is cost effective to redo it. The bigger issue is, how do you redo it? It's just feet away from, the entrance to the main library right now. And one of the questions is, if this is redone, you have options. Is this redone that you're going to continue to lease it out to other parties, or say, is the second floor converted to something like a community room, which, because of its design, would have possibilities?
One of the discussions that I've had with some of the public and is that obviously one of the things that's going to be a problem is there's ADA issues there, and the thought was to make the first floor accessible to the public and ADA appropriate, and use the second floor for storage and administrative offices. You then have the ability, if you ever have employees that need disability accommodation, to be able to accommodate them in offices that already exist on the first floor at the library, and so you don't run into issues, so that the second floor can be much more roughed out, let's say, than the first floor, and the first floor would be open to the public, potentially moving the computer room over there, moving some administrative functions over there, maybe reorienting how things go.
Just to follow on that comment, you're not, as the owner, you're not required to be current on building codes, except the ADA is a bit of a different animal because there's
Right.
federal jurisdiction. if the upstairs is just kept as offices, you're correct, you do not need to put an elevator in. You're unlocking a couple thousand square feet of space, so the cost of an elevator, may be a very prudent decision to get that. It certainly makes it more marketable for everybody. But yes, the first floor could also be redesigned to accommodate, say, some community spaces as well.
Okay.
One of the things that offers a really nice possibility is more of a flow of, say, staff areas or public areas by actually connecting the two. And again, that's a fairly cost-effective solution to
Well, and they can be
think about.
connected too, I think. I think that can work.
Absolutely. There are parcel lines. We've pulled from the planning department, we've pulled everything. It's a different parcel, but again, you could do a lot merge, or
Yeah.
perhaps planning
Lot
wouldn't
line
even require it.
adjustment, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's all sorts of connections with that. So what we're in the process of doing right now is actually finalizing the report, which will be done in, we expect it about a week. And then, the next step, the next thing to be looking at would definitely be to think about, how can this space best be integrated into the library? And what are the costs of doing so? Those two key things at a conceptual level could reveal a lot of information very
Do we
quickly and
have
very
mold
clearly.
or asbestos abatement issues in the building?
I did not see any evidence of asbestos in the attic. I didn't see it above the first floor, although I'd like to go back and take a look at the framing up there. There's some sound insulating board, and I couldn't see what's behind that. That might have a possibility. The ductwork up on top does not have any.
Oh, good.
And a lot of the spaces are carpeted, so we don't have the issue, at least a known issue of, say, the adhesive that they use in tile, laying down vinyl tile and things. Used to be asbestos, so I don't see evidence of that. And if so, it can be encapsulated pretty readily. We didn't investigate for paint, but again, that can be dealt with pretty simply. So in short, it's a good candidate. That it's quite a maze, but because of the structure, the way it's been framed, you can create a lot of flexibility. One of the things that we discovered was that on the first floor, this area here, they actually demolished a good portion of the old exterior wall. Which was unfortunate, because I find the old exterior, the original building, to be quite
A lot of character.
quite attractive, and would be a nice asset for the community to bring back. That could actually still be done, but it becomes a more difficult proposition. And that's one of the issues that ideally would also be discussed and again, you do this quickly at a concept level rather than going very far into it, spending a lot of money and then deciding, well, that doesn't work or we can't afford it. But, do you restore the existing building, but then give up, basically a swath of space that's about 600 or 700 square feet of leasable space?
Why would you have to give that up?
Well, because the original building was back
okay, so
behind
they-
here,
there's
and
an
it's,
addition then to.
yes, there's additions on both the south and the north side. The north side is, the Friends use that space. And then we have the traffic school, and the library uses the back here. But again, there's a potential to really make a kind of a community feature out of bringing something back.
The 4,672 square feet that you're talking about in the building, that's including the current leasehold space that we have with the traffic school?
That
and everything,
includes
right?
both of the floors. The two additions, I think I have it in the report. I'm not sure but I think that the two pieces are about 1,300 square feet of that total. I'm not sure that the side on the north side is a problem, except possibly with the tip. I mean, one of the things is that the Friends projects out beyond. I have some photos here, which are also on the cover of the report. you know, the original building, it had a corner entrance. It had a considerably different presence. It's actually, I was reviewing the downtown design guidelines today, and it's something that they actually, you know, actively seek for businesses, if they're on a corner position, to provide. So again, that kind of idea of getting this look back, a lot of the
Along
ornament.
with Carnegie next door would be pretty impressive. That's really
Well, it
nice.
would reveal that, it would be easier to see the
Yeah.
Carnegie from the main street there. And it would be a much better neighbor, because quite frankly, it's not an attractive building. And whether you, the Miller Building to be specific, not Carnegie, which is lovely, but, again, whether you wanted to lease it or to use it for your own, purposes, the value is enhanced
Okay.
either way.
But couldn't we, rather than completely restore the old building and do away with the additional space, couldn't we just build it to look like it used to look like?
The addition
present
on the
state?
south fundamentally prevents that. It's just such a different thing with the stucco stone, and it's the proportions and the nature of this building and the corner entrance can't really be accommodated with that. But again, you have the opportunity, if you lost that space, to actually use the kind of the park and the entrance area, the walkway that exists currently between the entry to the main library and the kind of the Friends of the Library space, as it's now configured, that you could actually, you know, really develop the same amount of space, probably in a better, more usable position. I mean, I've worked on libraries. One of the things that is very, very clear just walking into the space is the staff areas are really not adequate to support efficient use of staff for library patrons. So they definitely.
You're talking about this building or the current library?
Well, I'm talking about the current library space, and again, by making that, you know, a direct connection, you know, we wouldn't be talking about a large addition, probably be doing some reframing. One of the Friends space it's a very narrow slit. It's, you know, 10, 11 feet wide. In fact, if you connect the building, then suddenly you're 15 feet, 16 feet. It's a much more usable space.
If we took the street side
Yes,
off, the addition,
yes,
then could we rebuild it to look like the old
Yes.
building?
Yes.
Just that side of the
And
facade.
we could
well,
still, could still maintain that other side?
I would argue that you need to take the
that back.
kind of the tip of the Friends off as well. It should not project out beyond. It could project to the same edge at the street level. And then again, you could do something back in this area that would still leave quite a gracious entrance to the main library and replace that space and I think make a kind of a better connection, but more efficient way of staffing the library and get that extra usability. I mean, it's really about kind of driving cost-effective solutions
Right.
that solve the needs for the library staff and the patrons.
Yeah, I don't think that the idea behind renovating Miller is just to create lease space. There's enough empty lease space in Dixon already, so that's a waste of money. Essentially, renovating Miller is to make it available to the public to expand the library instead of doing the, you know, $22 or $25 million plan that, you know, the prior district librarian had in mind. So the idea is, can we make cost-effective use of Miller, adding additional space and functionality to the existing library without, you know, spending top dollars to do it?
Yeah, and clearly, this is very doable, and at reasonable costs.
Good.
But when I talk about reasonable, if you're, you know, new electrical, new mechanical, new roof,
Well, I'm just gonna compare the square footage. You quoted me 4672. I don't know what the net's gonna be. I assume that's the gross, but
That's gross.
The point is, I can think about what it would cost to build new square footage if I was gonna get 4,000 square feet, compare that to what your cost is, and if you're saving us a lot of money and providing us a great design, then maybe that makes it an easy decision.
I suspect it will be. So the next step, once the report is done, which it's not fully right now, we need to wrap up some items, again, would be to look at how you develop the space, because that will drive some of the cost.
Okay, now, where are we at in terms of, just to be plain speaking, what it's costing us to have this study done? What are we paying you right now?
Approximately $4,900.
$4,900?
Yes.
And will that include the completion of this study then?
It includes the completion of the study, but
Including
it
cost
doesn't
estimate?
include design or
Okay,
cost
okay.
estimating, which would be the next step. This really is the foundation
Okay.
to do that.
So to get the cost estimates, and I assume then you're providing us with a plan and cost estimates at that point?
Correct.
Okay, what would that cost us for a plan and cost estimates, so we know what we're getting into? Ballpark.
Probably in the range of $10,000 to $12,000.
Okay.
And that would give you 2 to 3 schemes, so provide some alternatives for you. One of which we would probably, I would recommend that we look at an elevator and, you know, what does that do? One in which we don't do an elevator.
Okay.
That kind of thing, and then we would cost both of them.
All right.
And then you'd actually have something that, see, right now, you can just say, well, I can renovate this without knowing what you're gonna do with it. The kind of the delta on the cost estimate is,
No, we're able to give you some
significant.
functionality,
Right.
that's not an issue, okay.
Yeah.
And then, assuming we move to the next step, what are your fees as architect in connection with the project, either as a percentage or a fee, ballpark?
well, we would, I don't have that for you right now. I mean, we need to see what comes out of this, how far you wanna do it. If we're looking at restoring the building, there's some historic details that just take more work over standard things. It's, you know, are we really just taking the second floor space and, you know, kind of cleaning it up? Or are we kind of reconfiguring and putting a lot of computers or, you know, AV, electrical, things like that we have to think about? And I need a larger consultant team. So what we can do is I can give you, you know, an estimate of that at the completion of kind of the cost estimate and the design scheme. If, you know, if you select and say, well, we're gonna pick option A, then it's very easy
Okay.
to do to give you
Last question.
a set fee.
Right now, we have a pretty leaky roof over there, I think. And that's probably one of the main things that's contributing to additional damage. Is it your recommendation that we repair the roof first in order to stop that further damage? Or is that going to be something we're gonna have to deal with when we actually make a decision about what we're gonna do with the building as a whole? In other words, should we undertake repairing or replacing the roof at this point to stop any further damage, and then stop there until we figure out, or should we hold off on that? What's your recommendation?
I mean, you can do it both ways. It definitely has to be repaired at a minimum, and you wanna do that this fall, period, because the leaks are substantial. There are some ceiling tiles that are ready to kind of burst into the traffic school on the lower
I
level.
was afraid of.
So something has to be done for this fall, or it gets progressively scarier for the use of the building. And if you continue to allow the water infiltration, then the structure, which appears to be sound, may not be.
If we do the roof repairs, because I know among other things you might be considering either the pitch or reconfiguring some of the rafters in there, I just don't know, but are we throwing money away, or are you able to redesign around our roof repair? In other words, if we're repairing the roof, but we're not changing the pitch or design of the roof, are we spending money that's wasted money? Or do we at this point have to make decisions about those issues?
And that's the hard one, that my recommendation right now, given how the damage is, and seeing the roof, would actually be to patch it right now. And then we can see the areas, you know, the edge of the building, which is right along here where the existing building comes down and meets the first floor addition on the south side. I mean, you can see the water damage, which is significant. There's also water damage up on the roof. The roof does need some different design, but before we fully re-roof it, I think you want to know what your scheme is. For the most part, because if we think of the original building as being kind of that footprint, kind of how it is on the roof, as being sacrosanct, then It's still, when we're doing roofing and if we were to put ornament back and things, there will be people up on the roof. Right now, there's no mechanical system that's workable up on for the second floor. So, you know, normally we would look at some kind of ceiling unit, so we're gonna have roof penetrations when we do the new
Now, the
work.
real frustration is that nobody repaired this roof years ago, and literally, I think that would have prevented a significant amount of damage from happening. And now we're at the point where we have let all this damage occur, when we should have done even the simplest of maintenance on it, 5 or 6,
Well,
10 years ago.
And so, one of the things that became very clear is, these are parapet roofs. They collect leaves.
Yeah.
You
And
have
we have a
got
big tree
to,
there.
the library must dedicate a very small amount of funds, but to twice yearly cleaning those leaves out. I've got photos, here, this photo right here, there's a drain under there. You can't even see it because there's 9 inches of leaves. And what happens is when the leaves are there, they stay, the water doesn't get to the drain,
Pools
the
and
roof
collects.
degrades 5 times faster than if it's draining properly. And there's adequate slope. So a good chunk of this is, there's some poor detailing at the joint areas between the existing and new that could be improved on pretty readily.
Are those leaves that you're showing there, is that on the first floor?
These are leaves that are on the first floor. This is actually the second floor. You can see that it's fairly clean, except the whole roof goes to the, kind of the front area, kind of the, what would be the northwest corner.
Yep.
And that's where you'll see the pile of leaves, and again,
And
it's
there is-
probably a
and there-
foot
And
thick.
that pile of leaves on the second floor you're showing.
That's on the second floor. This is a condition on the first floor. And you have leak issues, significant leak issues, both from the roof of the second floor into the second floor.
Okay.
Some of that going down to the first floor, and then in the one-story areas, you also have significant leaks.
But in the short term, we're not talking about necessarily re-roofing this at this point. And if we decide to renovate, we're talking about patching it. Is it possible
correct.
to patch it on a temporary basis and alleviate the damage?
Or stop more damage.
I think that we could catch 90% of it. You'd spend 4 times as much to catch all 100%.
Yeah.
So it's a question of, if you're looking at significant renovations,
You don't wanna
where's the good stopping point? And really what we're trying to prevent is unsafe conditions for your current tenant, and stabilization so that there's no further damage. And that can be done with some details, and again, that work could be set up and done this fall pretty readily. And I would say that my recommendation, strong recommendation to you, is to do those repairs and get those fixes underway while you're looking at the bigger picture. Then we'll re-roof once we know what the bigger picture is. Because again, it's better to do that re-roofing. If we're putting new mechanical equipment on top, if you've just re-roofed it, you avoid warranties, you may have a different contract, it just gets complicated.
But when you say 90%, does that mean we would stop water intrusion?
Yes, so there still probably would be some minor problems realistically.
Right.
Would a hot tar slurry seal be better than a patch individual crack foundation, what is visible?
No,
And if so, would the slurry be workable for contractors in the future?
I don't think so. I think I'd do a more typical, built-up roof repair on it. You can see this one right here at this curve. This is your parapet on the lower level, and there's, just visible cracking and gaps where you have water and air infiltration. Those things can be seen. One of the things is that in doing this process, would be good to remove the ceiling tiles from the lower floor. And from there, we should be able to see very clearly, where the damage is, and we can work to repair those spots.
So you don't recommend a thin coat of tar slurry to seal everything?
No, because the main part of the roof is fine. Roofs fail typically at joints. They fail on the upper area, you can't see it, but there's hatches and penetrations. That's where your water's getting in. And at the edges, the bulk of the roof out in these flat areas in reasonable condition, it's not what's causing your leaks, it's at the edges.
As long as it's not leaking and we only need it to hold up 6 months or a year longer.
Well, that's it, it's probably to a year or so, and that's why I worry that, money's precious.
Yeah.
And doing the patching will mean that we're not wasting money, which is potential. If you redo it and then have to re-roof at the end of that because of the design we've come up
Okay.
with.
I don't consider it wasted money when you're doing preventative maintenance. So you're preventing water intrusion, which is gonna cause a great deal more damage in the interior of the building. I don't think we could say we're wasting money because we're gonna patch this and we'll probably replace it or change it in the future. That's not a waste of money.
Well, depends on how you view it, and again, I think a stabilization program where you're looking to catch most everything, certainly everything that's visible, and looking at the patterns, we're gonna be able to tell most everything about both the lower and upper roofs where the water's coming in and be able to patch in those areas.
Right.
We all know, though, when I say 90% is sometimes you patch all those and the problem can migrate to another spot that perhaps isn't visible because it's under something and you just can't see it. So I don't want to, unless you're re-roofing the whole thing, I think it's not reasonable to believe that it's going to be perfect because there is significant issues with both the roofs, upper and lower. But I think we can get to a high percentage of 90% at least, which stabilizes things.
Right.
And the difference cost-wise between doing this patchwork and then re-roofing the whole thing properly. I mean, we could re-roof it cheaply, but one of the problems is like at the connection between some of the parapets and things, there's not a reglet that allows for repairs and things to happen and that, takes the water out over the edge of the roof. There's just all sorts of things, but to do them now, I believe would be premature. That's my advice. You're absolutely right that you can solve everything by re-roofing it, and we could even solve all the detail problems. But again, I do think there's potential for having to redo things and people saying, a year down the road, why the heck did we re-roof the whole thing? Why didn't we just fix it? Mm-hmm. So we're happy to go either way to support you in that. I think it's your decision, but our recommendation would be the patch, which again, I think covers the vast majority.
Okay.
And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the report and your testimony.
Any questions from the board? Further questions?
So you think that if we stabilize the roof and we take care of the water intrusion issues, then that's as much as we need to do at the present time while we consider a larger renovation.
Right. I mean, if I was I've sat in your shoes in another city, if I'm putting myself in your shoes, that's what I would do if I believe it's even reasonable that you're going to proceed with modifications to Miller. If you think we just want to re-roof it, there's no money to do anything else, any further changes that would help the library, then I would say that you might want to proceed with the whole re-roofing. But again, I don't think that preserves it. I mean, right now, as you've told me from the dais, the goal is to create new space very cost effectively for the library, and the way to do that is by using it, and you can't do that unless we make libraries are complex beasts. So to do it well, you want to just think it through and have a plan in place, and then you can execute on it.
My question goes to maybe the interior of the property. So we know sagging ceiling tiles and water damage and all kinds of staining and all that sort of thing. We would stay away from that at this point, repairing that at this point, yes or no?
I personally would advocate that you want to replace some of the ceiling tiles and I mean, there's some considerable bubbling and things on them. It can be actually, you know, two drivers of construction costs are labor and materials. The materials are fairly cheap and the labor is fairly cheap because you can replace a lot of ceiling area pretty quickly. And by doing that, then you'll know if you see further staining, you know you've got an issue there. But I think they would change the look and feel at a very low cost for what's there
We're
right now.
talking cosmetic changes, essentially.
Yeah, I think of it that way. It's also, again, it would help if there are further problems to identify them because it would be very clear.
I mean, just put a few buckets on the floor and see if they fill up.
You could.
We're doing that at the schools.
Yeah.
We could do
Yeah,
it at the
really.
library.
Any further questions? Board members?
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a great potential and kind of seeing past what I saw when I first looked at the building, seeing some of the historic photos that are on the library's website and
Could be a
work with
pretty cool
Susan.
building if it's fixed up.
It could be quite marvelous, actually, and again, at a very cost-effective price, particularly compared to the previous
Nice to
scheme.
hear. Thank you.
Well, I think, you know, we've established the fact we're gonna need more room in that library eventually, and it's not too far down the road. So it only makes sense that perhaps this would be the way to expand.
Well, it very much so. I mean, I've got, looking at it, I've got all sorts of ideas. This is the first piece. You know, quite frankly, you still have some marvelous opportunities with the basement of the Carnegie Library. Again, at a cost-effective basis. To do so, you need to put an elevator in. Again, in doing that, you suddenly open up 2,000 or 3,000 square feet of space. The shell is sound again. You need finishes, you need lights, you need computer outlets and things. But compared to the cost of a new building, you know, I would hope that downstream, and actually maybe as part of this next step, even if it's your pleasure, to look at that as well, kind of within the library as it exists now for the other opportunities. And quite frankly, that Carnegie Library basement is very low-hanging fruit for you.
If we renovate Miller, are we gonna get at least 30 years useful life, you think, out of what we're gonna do, assuming that we do it correctly?
Every piece has different things, depending on what you do on the roof. If you go built up 20 years, mechanical equipment, 20 years, electricals, probably 50.
Okay.
You know, so it varies, but if we protect the skin and we protect the structure,
That's what I'm
Then
talking about.
we're talking about, you know, a 100-year kind of time
Okay,
frame
good.
there, and that's, when all is said and done, those are your biggest cost drivers. And
Okay.
Once that goes, it gets really, really expensive, and it hasn't gone yet. At least everything that we've seen, you know, there's water damage to the underside of the sheathing and things. You can't have that many leaks, but that's readily done. We didn't see any significant structural degradation at all. And again, having those concrete walls, they're pretty tough.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
all right, thank you.
I'm gonna open it up if you wanna give me a few minutes to the public, if they got any questions. You might come up here. Thank you.
As what you call it, a direction that I would hope the board would drive on this would be the aesthetic considerations that this building definitely be integrated as part of this ancient library or whatever you'd call it, that we shouldn't be looking at it in terms of, you know, facade changes that are, you know, look like something, but try and get something as close as possible to what we have. There's been a long time in just getting the Carnegie put on this thing, and I know this is a boring thing to hear over and over again, this stuff about the Carnegie, but when I look at that Miller building, I say, God, this will be great. This is this integrated piece it could be of this thing. And the other aspect I'd like to just mention is that, and this is a budgetary consideration, is that I would like to see the Carnegie at least put on a staggered basis in terms of renovation. In other words, if you are doing a budget and you say, okay, I'm gonna go and put 100,000 into this, I'd like to see, say, 10,000 put into the Carnegie as for painting or something of that. And each year you can do that and you can stagger this. This is how usually restorations are done, is they're not just plopped down, they're done over a long period of time. So those are just comments I've had about this thing. But
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
I would expect you to get a lot of support from the community for restoring this building and using it, incorporating it into the library. And I think this gentleman could have a full-time job in downtown Dixon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments?
I just wanted to say how exciting it is to know that the property that we purchased is sound and that there can be a viable plan for possible, steps towards restoration and usability for our library, for the city, for our patrons, for our staff. And I think that it'd be good, as to repeat what David said, that some of the building and improvement money that was budgeted is allotted towards the historical Carnegie building, as well as our present library space, which needs some sprucing up, cleaning. It make a better face for the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? See none, we're moving on to 11B, review and approve our 13-14 budget. Thank you very much.
This calls for action. Do you need any action on this item?
I do, I need a budget, I need the budget.
No, not budget, the
Oh,
Miller Building.
no,
Presentation is just a presentation
it's just a
discussion.
presentation, I'm
Okay.
sorry. It was,
Thank you.
So are we not giving direction to move forward with,
I think we should move forward
we're
with the
waiting.
I
cost
believe
estimates.
he's already moving forward with the secondary
Yeah.
report, right?
no?
He's preparing the rest of the report, and then we have to decide whether we're gonna spend 12,000 and do the cost estimates.
Correct. So I mean, I guess given that it's been agendized, you could provide I mean, I deal with boards all the time. I'm on the school board in Vallejo as well now. But I mean, you could obviously authorize the library director to, continue with the next phase up to a certain amount, and that would be a legitimate.
I'd like to see us at least move forward, get an estimate for the cost for the next phase.
Okay.
The
Yeah,
only
get it.
concern I have is that I don't know that the Miller report was this made available to the public? When was this first made available?
I just received it today.
Yeah, so I think if we were gonna take action to spend money, just to give the public a second chance at this, because they really didn't have an opportunity to review the documents, that we would.
I'm not suggesting we
Oh,
spend money, I'm just
okay.
suggesting that we go ahead
Given
and
the
ask
direction,
him
just give the
to
direction.
bring us a proposal for the next phase.
cost
So
estimate,
he's estimating what the next phase would cost. What I'm asking is that we give him direction, or give Vanessa direction, to ask for a formal bid for the next
Okay.
phase.
Is that the
Certainly.
board's wish to give
Okay.
direction?
Sure.
Mr. Garcia?
That's fine.
Vanessa?
Sure.
You have direction?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on. 11B.
I have presented to you two documents. The first is the final end of fiscal year 12-13 report. And in addition to that, it's the fiscal year 13-14, my proposed budget. And
Are we under a deadline tonight for this?
we do not have a deadline for this, but
Okay.
we need to get it into the Solano County Auditor as soon as possible, just
Right.
as that will kind of dictate our expenditures.
The concern that I have, again, is that there's been new budget figures presented tonight that I foresaw yesterday that I don't think the public's had an opportunity to view. So I don't know that we should be taking action. Really, the documents that are part of the agenda should be available to the public 3 days prior to a regular meeting or 24 hours prior to a special meeting. It's not just that we should be noticing those per the Brown Act, it's that we should make any documents that are gonna be the subject of an action item available to the public so that they can inspect them and comment on them. So if we were to approve this budget tonight, in my opinion, the public's only had really 1 day access to those documents. And I don't know that it's appropriate, we can discuss it tonight, but I don't know that it's appropriate to act on it tonight. I would move that we table any action tonight till the next meeting to give the public full and fair opportunity to comment on the budget. If we want to discuss it tonight, that's a different issue, but because they're not harmed if we don't take action.
Sure.
There's no cure and correct.
My only question to you is, and since you're obviously more familiar with the Brown Act than I am, is there a specific requirement for board
Brown Act-
documents
no,
other than?
Brown Act is about notice, it's about.
agenda, correct?
yeah,
Not
which-
necessarily
And the
meeting
agenda
documents.
was published and noticed correctly, as
Yes.
far as I could tell. But you're still in a position where you haven't given the public an opportunity to comment on the documents, even though we're taking action on a document that they haven't had an opportunity to see, okay? And so that's my concern. If we're just doing presentations, I don't really have a concern because the board's not taking action. But you're asking us to approve a document, which is a budget, which has only been out 24 hours. So I do have a concern with that.
Sure.
If we postpone action till the next meeting, then it's been out a week.
Yeah.
It was first,
Yeah,
it's
and
published now.
I understand this,
Yeah.
and I understand the necessity of that and giving the
Yeah.
community notice,
I
but
don't-
this has not been the practice in the past as far as the board meetings.
Well, but the documents, let me explain. The documents don't have to be posted online,
Yes.
okay? Just the agenda has to, but the documents have to be available at the library for the public to inspect.
Okay.
And so the problem is we're acting on a document that hasn't been available at the library for the public to inspect. It hasn't been available for the public to look at. I don't even know if there's copies of these documents in the back of the room tonight. Are there copies?
There are
Okay, good.
copies of this document.
But at a minimum, I think that the documents have to be available for the public to inspect, and then they have to be available at the meeting for the public to look at, in the vestibule, for example, for them to pick up copies or to look at. And if it's a specific document that you're asking us to take action on, approve, a resolution or a document like this, the budget, it seems to me that, no, you don't have to post that online, you only have to post the agenda as notice, but that they have to be available somewhere for the public to inspect. That's the concern.
And your suggestion is not necessarily that the entirety of the board packet be available, it's just that the specific documents that are, actionable documents be available.
I think the better practice is to make all the public
Yes.
documents available. I mean, maybe there's some confidential closed session documents, but to make the public documents certainly available. But any document that we're going to take action on, I think at a minimum has to be available.
Sure.
If there are reports, the Miller report, for example, wasn't available, but we didn't take action tonight, we just heard a presentation. The public is not prejudiced by that. But to the extent possible, even informational reports or other documents that are informational in nature only, it should be available to the public so that they can have an opportunity to comment on them. But anything that we're gonna take action on, because they can be prejudiced by that, I think that we're required to provide public opportunity for them to inspect those documents.
Okay.
So I think certainly if we took action on things tonight, I would not be able to vote in favor of it because of those issues, okay? So,
I don't think it hurts us to put that kind of information out there.
Well, I'm not saying that necessarily hurts anybody, it's not that I'm disputing the need to it,
I
it's
understand.
just,
It may not have been done in the past.
yes,
That
and
may
that's,
not- that may
I'm
not be
fine.
good or not-
I-
as
Oh,
well.
it's not necessarily an excuse,
Right.
it's just been my practice in the past, and I am open to revising this to make sure that we have a full and complete board document, and then when I am bogged down by schedule delays of consultants, attorneys and whatnot, I can't get a full document available to the board or the public. So if it is your suggestion to at least make available as soon as I can the documents that need to have action on them, I can certainly do that, and we can proceed in somewhat of a piecemeal fashion. I'm completely fine with that.
The documentation's out now, and all the board members have their agenda. Would this be able to be brought back? Wednesday, September 4th is our next week of our board meetings. September 5th is our school board meeting. September 5th is our school board meeting. September 4th would be the Wednesday prior to that.
Yeah, I can have it, yeah. absolutely. I can have it
Is that,
available.
and is that appropriate for us to give you time for the budget too?
The budget's in
Yeah,
front of
absolutely.
but
I
we
mean,
can't approve
yes.
it
Yeah, if you
because it
can't
has-
approve it, then I'd like to put it back on there because I need
Well,
it.
no,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
get it done, but we can discuss it tonight, so it'll just become an action item.
Sure.
Is there any
Absolutely.
different information? Is there any public comment? No, we were happy with it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, you know,
Motion,
the only
second,
thing that, you
pass,
know,
move.
now that I do have the option to maybe modify it, since it's not getting acted on is, you know, I did put money in the building fund for anticipation of roof repairs. I did do an anticipation, although I'm not a contractor, nor do I know how much roofs cost. I did put a significant amount in there, but knowing that it is a possibility we may be proceeding with essentially patchwork, which is probably still more expensive than I could imagine, maybe I could, you know, allocate some of that money for repairs in the library and to the Carnegie. We have some significant carpeting issues that I might actually be a hazard, and I'd like to ask that the board maybe consider that we can allocate some of that money in the building materials fund for,
Take us through last year's actuals first,
sure, absolutely.
and then we can talk about budgets.
Sure. So the actuals,
This one?
Okay, here's the last year's, this is the budget for next
Yeah, okay.
year. So we just go revenue first?
pardon me?
Revenue first on the
Yes.
budget, on the,
Sure,
on
so,
last
yeah, end of
actual?
fiscal year 12-13, the things that are concerning to me, and you obviously can't see because I don't have the red or, you know, whatnot, is the Measure B revenue is down. And, you know, I anticipated it being down, though not down in the amount that it was. So it's essentially, you know, 10% lower than what was, you know, estimated before my arrival, in the budget before my arrival.
So that's 506, 860, 43?
Yes,
Okay, good.
yes, and in the budget, it was 565, which
Correct.
was budgeted
It's
by the prior
significant.
administration.
Significant.
And, you know, it's also a 12% decrease from, you know, the actuals of fiscal year
Sure.
11-12. So, you know, carrying that concern over to the next fiscal year, I've done a very conservative estimate of Measure B revenue. I've
Okay.
reviewed Solano County's and, you know, City of Dixon's sales tax revenue numbers, and I've still been a little bit more conservative as to what we are going to project for the next fiscal year, because I would rather be under than, you know, I would rather be more cautious with my projections of Measure B revenue.
So it's-
As far as all of the other revenues, there's nothing that really significantly concerns me.
What's a unitary?
Unitary is, it's another, I believe it's another sales tax. It's kind of a small sales tax that is associated with I can get back to you with that, but I believe it is another kind of insignificant sales tax that is part of our kind of revenue mix. Another thing that I wanted to point out, and this is something that I've reached out to Ian Arnold about, who is our you know, representative to the Redevelopment Commission, is that I have no numbers from Ian, and I don't think they have really any information as to how much we will be receiving from the final year of the redevelopment distribution. As you can tell, we did put some numbers in, you know, 9019 and 9020, but those numbers were actually, those revenue codes were abolished by the auditor's office, and it shows back up again in the 9592. So it all essentially balances out within the revenue code, but essentially the money that I put in for redevelopment for 13-14 is really just an estimate, because we have absolutely no clue. And
The numbers are out. I don't remember what the library is. The school districts are about 200,000 each.
okay,
So, but there are numbers out.
Okay.
And there is a payment to the district, to the library district, but I don't remember what it is.
okay, well then I can find that if they're out.
There's a distribution to the library
So
district.
9019, 9020, we actually got almost $41,000.
9019, yeah, 9020, 9021.
Yeah, 9021.
Well, and then also look at 9592. Oh, actually, no. I'm sorry, I misspoke. So it's 9592 is the revenue category that no longer is relevant to us, and it's been redistributed in 9019, 9020, and 9021. And yes, it is almost over $41,000.
So that was 25,000, so they budgeted it, we budgeted it in 95, 92.
Yes, as,
And it actually showed up in 9021.
9019 through 9021.
Okay,
So
but
those
that's
are the
only,
things-
but that, okay, but that's only like 20, okay.
No,
Okay. It's because there was $25,000 budgeted.
yes, and it.
The actual was 26,
6,500.
and we got 41.
95, 92. 1213, it was budgeted, but the actuals for that 1213 and 9592 was zero.
Down.
Because it was actually.
I understand, but we actually got $41,000.
Yes.
Is
well,
that correct?
And it actually 41,000 plus $7,940 in 9019.
Oh, because of 9019,
Yes,
9020, 9021.
the residual pass through and.
Got it.
all my
Okay,
extras.
so we actually got more for that.
Yes, absolutely.
That's where the original budget
Yes.
was for 26,000,
Yes.
these to that. Got it?
Yes.
Okay,
And
that's
what you're
fine.
saying is you have to just confirm and plug that number in.
Yes, absolutely, the redevelopment.
Got it.
If it's been released, then I will be very happy.
So what we're saying is the categories 909, 9019, 9020, 9021 are the same as 9592?
Well, 9592 no longer is relevant because redevelopment does not exist as
Understand
an
that.
entity
But
anymore.
what-
So, that, I'm not sure why that category was even employed in the prior budget. But it's reflected in, 9019 through 9021.
Okay. And we got almost 50,000.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
And that helped offset some of the losses from the Measure B revenue also, but
Okay.
it's just, my estimation is, it's just, well, now that we know the numbers are out, then that will make things far more concrete for me.
Okay.
And then the addition is just kind of, nothing significant to note with the rest of our revenue, unless you have additional questions regarding that.
Which on target?
Your Measure L money starts, when? In November? We go
Yeah.
from Measure B to Measure L,
Yes,
and it's this November?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, so that's last year's. What about expenditures?
Expenditures, moving on
On
expenditures.
Actuals?
Yes. So actuals for expenditures, one thing that you will note is we have a significant cost savings
Salaries.
in salaries. And
Surprise, surprise.
there are two reasons for that. Obviously, some of the prior positions that were, higher salaried positions no longer exist at the library. However, I think some of that, not a significant amount, but some of that will have to do with the fact that I was out on maternity leave and receiving, disability payments, and I was out on leave without pay for the library. So I was not getting paid my full salary because it was pregnancy disability leave payments. So essentially that might skew it just a little bit, but I think the most significant aspect of the salaries have to do with the prior positions. In addition to that, things to note, if you have any additional questions about any of those categories, our telephone costs are always skyrocketing, which is something that we're looking forward to revising within the next year by moving to the voice over IP system. Let's see, maintenance equipment, all of these are consistent with kind of the cost increase of library equipment. Let's see, inventory shortage, computer components, consulting, accounting and financial services. That is an increase because we do have, that's the category where we are charged.
Code number?
I'm sorry, it's 2235.
2235, thank you.
And we had the additional cost of the audit service, but that's in addition to the money that's charged to us by the county auditor's office for processing our budget and our payroll. So
We also decreased our contracted services by.
we did, and that is something that I can't, I've had some staff members helping me look into that, and I'm not entirely sure why that is the case. It's our SNAP fees did not, that's usually the bulk of our contracted services. Our SNAP fees did not increase really significantly from the past prior years. It's still too high.
Is
So-
2261, is that Switzer?
Switzer is kind of bunched in with 2245. Essentially, any service, any contractor that we have an ongoing service contract with is put into contracted services. Whether that's SNAP, whether that's the gardener, whether that's,
Next time,
Sure.
can we have a breakdown on that category?
Sure,
Because
absolutely.
that's where we really need to cut costs.
I have a quick question, Vanessa.
Sure.
2120 and 2140, you have listed in the maintenance, building and equipment. Any of that would be what you were talking about, carpet and or offsets for the roof?
You know, I'm wondering if I could put it in there. It's just, things are really specifically defined by the auditor's office as to what categories they should go in. There's a chart of accounts that explains what goes into what, so I'd have to review that chart of accounts to make sure I put it into the proper category. But it's very possible, more than likely, they're very funny about anything that is fixed to the building and considered a fixed asset. And so, you know, I have to make sure it's not anyhow kind of a building improvement fixed category. So I can double check the chart of accounts to see if I could redistribute it in there. But I can ask for a report as to contracted services and maybe a comparative report from the prior fiscal year to this past fiscal year, so 11, 12, 13.
Is our ADA ramp reflected on 2140? As it is a building
Yes.
improvement?
Yes.
It's included in that?
Yes.
Okay.
So, let's see, in addition, software maintenance and support, yeah, publication of legal notices, let's take a look at any additional ones. Advertising, marketing, rents, services, obviously, legal services, very high. That's one that exceeded what was budgeted pretty significantly by, 50%. I'm sorry, that's 2239. It was a significant increase from what was budgeted, though only a 30% increase from what was spent on legal services in fiscal year 11-12, but still significant. And
We shouldn't need lawyers as much in the future.
yeah, nice. And let's see, any additional advertising marketing that's not that significant.
So just so I understand, our ending fund balance was 115 in cash?
Our ending fund balance is, well, so this is what I've differentiated it from the prior budgets. The prior budgets had the ending fund balances, but they also included the reserves from the fund balance. So it's essentially you're transferring money from your savings account and you have leftover and you're including it with the fund balance. And it seemed to, essentially inflate the fund balance. So I subtracted the reserve account transfers from the fund balance. So our actual fund balance was around $83,000, which is significantly higher than it has been. in
Are
the
we
past.
saying we have over $200,000?
Pardon me?
Are we saying we have cash of over $200,000?
We have more than that in our reserve accounts and our fund balance. This is just the money that we've transferred from this fiscal year
This
into our.
fiscal year, but this fiscal year we transferred 200,000, am I correct? Or
Well,
we
no, balance less account transfer, we transferred $83,000 into our fund balance. Or we have, excess of $83,000 into our fund balance.
And that 83,000 is in cash
Yes.
as opposed to in.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's different
Yes.
than our ending fund
Right.
balance.
Yes.
Where ours is just paper.
Yes,
They're
It's
IOUs.
it's the government's version of an IOU.
IOUs.
Okay.
yeah.
So, and we have actually in cash a little bit more than that because of prior year. So
Yes,
when we
yes.
discuss this in 200,000+,
Yes.
I'm guessing.
Yes, if not exceeding 300,000. I can bring that report to you with
Well,
the
it would be
fund
good
balance
for the
transfers.
public to know as
Sure.
well as us.
Sure, fund.
Does that just means that we have some working
Do
capital?
you, yeah.
We
well, I was
have, we do have working cash, yes.
Okay.
We do have them, they're in 3 main categories. I mean, 2 of them are essentially operational reserves, so,
Do you have a capital account that's maintained as well, that's separate from this?
I believe so. I'll check into that, but, so we have 2 reserve, we might even have 3
I think
operational.
it would be good for us to get a breakdown of that.
Sure, absolutely.
Especially the capital account, because
Yes.
we're talking about
That's right.
these things that are to do what we really have. And of course,
Yeah.
I'm assuming that redevelopment stuff really should be targeted towards those
Yes.
capital accounts.
Yeah, and we have an unallocated fund balance of, I would, and I can get this number to you, but that $83,000, since the board has not specifically said we'd like it transferred into this reserve fund.
I'm just saying, that's
Yeah.
really what it's for.
Yeah, no, and that's,
Why don't we
I-
just do that? Is
Yeah.
that okay?
yeah, no, I could have that
Any
on.
further questions from the board?
You know, we can't approve it, but we can next week.
Let's wait till the
Sure.
next meeting to
And that's
approve
not a
it.
problem.
Yeah.
But thank you for that.
Any
Yeah.
questions?
Any other questions?
Any questions from the public?
Yep.
This is a good example of why the public should go and get these things
Absolutely.
several days prior.
Sure.
Because I just received this at the late afternoon and
Yep.
started going through it myself. And I just find these either inconsistencies or strange sort of things that I don't understand. And I'm sure you have an explanation for them, but, we don't know anything about this, some of it, or I don't. So I put down a few items on here.
Give it to us by the account
Yeah, the
numbers.
account number,
Yeah,
so we
that's
can go
from
there.
our-
Okay, well, first of all, on that revenue, I'm still unclear about that as far as the 9019 versus and 902021. And I understand that the redevelopment money's been taken away. However, $26,500 does not equal whatever this other stuff is, 7940, 1140. I mean, where did you get these numbers from for this,
Well,
for this
the
estimate?
prior
Prior year was that?
administration completed the budget for this past fiscal year. These numbers were completed prior to my arrival.
Oh, so these were the actual numbers that were here, and now you aren't sure of it, and so you put in.
So
Where does
we're-
the 30,000 say come from? Is that from this 26,000?
So you're referring to, we're back into the revenue.
You're
Onto the revenue
She's trying to
first, yeah.
say, because you told us from a budget perspective, 9592 was 26,000, which, as you stated, came from the prior administration.
Redevelopment
Got
fund.
that.
Yes.
In reality, the money is being passed through from the redevelopment to
Yes.
us in the accounting codes 9019, 9020, and 9021.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
his question, I'm paraphrasing.
Yes.
But you tell me if I'm wrong, is why is it 47,000 versus 26?
It's because it's just how there's no telling as to why redevelopment is,
Giving us more money.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But we don't even know if money is there. That's the thing, is because you're saying it's an unknown.
No, that's,
No,
no,
it
that's
is there.
reality.
This is the,
That is,
that's
oh, that's
actual.
reality from
county.
1213, right.
Yes,
They're
1213
saying
is the
those are
actual.
actuals.
Those are actual
Yes,
from the county.
That's
Right.
in our accounts, correct?
yes.
So in reality, though, I mean, if those things do come through, you're gonna be looking at another, whatever, $18,000, I guess, because you put the 30,000 on your actual budget, right? You're gonna be
There
looking
was
at 18 grand.
more than that, actually. It's
Or probably more
17
than that.
plus
Yeah.
4, so about 21,000.
Right, so that
Above.
will enhance
and
the budget.
It will enhance the budget, and, now that
Uh-huh.
I know that the distributions from redevelopment
I
the
see.
numbers are out, we'll
That's
know
what
the
I
more
was
exact
alluding.
number.
And
I
that's what I was alluding to, that the redevelopment fees really should be, when we look at them, although they're passing through in our operational budget, we should be tagging them
To
to
go
more
to,
of a
okay,
capital.
That's a,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's not an operating side.
Yeah, that should not be. This is a
allocation,
similar
that's
way
capital.
that we're handling it on the school board side.
Right.
And we had a major discussion on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
That
that's a
as
capital
we get
account
developer
item.
fees, in fact, we only, there was a big argument about that, but we only put 150,000 in our budget, even though we're projecting 300,000.
Uh-huh.
My question, I didn't want to put any, I lost that battle, only because I don't want to use it until I see it. And then we'll tick off the list from the facilities.
remember that.
Well, and he's right, actually, because we may not get.
Because that's how the
we may
prior,
not get
but
the full
that's how the
money.
prior board got in trouble.
Yeah.
Right, I remember that discussion in the school board.
So anyway,
Yeah.
but that's, and that's why I was asking her to give us a cash breakdown.
Uh-huh, yeah.
yeah, and I've only really transposed it from the way that it is given to me as a report from the Solano
Well,
County Auditor Control.
Sure.
Which
No,
put
I
it
know.
in
Okay,
our-
We get
but
it.
the problem is we're looking at approximately $48,000 worth of what should be maybe capital side money, and our ending
Correct.
fund balance really is potentially off by that amount. And so really, if this is capital side money and not operating side money, we should really be conservatively looking at our ending side fund balances instead of 83.
Again, I think. when we
About
look
half
at-
of that,
well,
yeah.
Well, 50 some odd thousand.
Yeah.
Should be being moved into more of a capital type expenditure
about
or
right.
a reserve or something.
So our ending fund balance is not quite as rosy
Well,
as
it's
we
ca-
think.
it's in the form of cash, that's good, but it should be moved towards
It's in,
capital.
yeah, it's on the capital side.
Okay.
Okay.
I had, on the expenditure side, first of all, on health insurance, 1230, it's showing an approximate 20% increase, but this is really more of a, well, let's see, 41,000 to 66,000.
Are we
Is that-
looking at the
We're
proposed
looking
budget
at
for
this,
13, 14?
1213,
yeah.
page
12,
2.
13. Okay, 12, 13.
And you
page
said
two.
what, health
Said that,
insurance,
yeah, was it a-
1230.
Yeah, you said you're going from 41,000 that was spent in 1213 to 66,000, but then you had next to it approximately 20% increase. And isn't 20% of 41,000, would that be about $8,000? Or am I,
Are you
4,000 is
looking at
10%?
Where are you looking?
Are you looking
I'm
at
looking at health
1314's
insurance.
budget?
Yeah, I think he's.
1230.
Oh, yeah, so we haven't even got to that yet.
Oh, you haven't,
So, because we were just trying to look at actuals for last
oh.
year.
Yeah, they were examining the
Oh,
We're
actual.
I'm
starting to
sorry.
compare last year's actuals to this year's budget.
Oh,
I get it, I'm on you.
Okay, yeah.
okay.
It's okay.
Should I
No,
mention any
no,
of these
well,
other
if you want,
concerns?
I
No,
mean,
we
we're-
can switch
I think we're gonna look at it in a minute, but that's
Oh, okay.
No, that's fair. Anything else on that?
2201, equipment under 1,500 goes from 430 to 3,000.
Yeah, you're comparing last year's actuals to the
year's,
current
yeah.
budget.
Exactly,
And we're
yeah.
we're about to, we have.
Oh, so
we're-
you're gonna go and do this?
Kind of looking
Why
at
don't I-
actuals,
Yeah.
kind of saying, did that look good?
Yeah,
Any
this is at the
comments?
close
Now
of
we're gonna
the
go through the
prior
budget,
fiscal
and
year.
we're gonna go to where you're going, 'cause that's a
Okay,
good
well,
question.
Okay.
you guys go and.
No, that's
Yeah.
a good question.
Okay,
That's a good
thanks.
question.
I'm glad I'm not losing it.
Any further questions from
On the actual,
on the actuals? Go ahead, continue, Vanessa.
sorry.
Okay.
You're all right.
So let's see, any additional surprises or any categories? So we're still on the end of fiscal year 12-13, the actuals for end of fiscal year 12-13. Any additional questions as to categories that look suspect to you?
We have none.
I think we're okay.
I just have one question more.
Sure.
I noticed extra help is way up. Why is that?
Pardon me? Could you repeat that?
Extra help, category 1121, under salaries.
1121 salaries.
Actually, what-
Because one of
From
the,
the estimate, but I'm saying, look at 1112.
yeah, you know, and then that's
12,
because
13
of
actual.
I would say because of the transition in positions. You know, a lot of times, a lot of the salaries were considered extra help when we had additional people come in to fill some of the positions that were unfilled. So that was a change.
400,
So,
what is about 400? Okay, so
you know, I think,
Yeah, it's just one
It's more
category
extra
versus
stuff,
the
yeah,
other,
but
yes,
it's
that's
about
right.
the same.
It's about the same, yeah.
About the same.
So our salaries didn't really go down as much as
no,
we thought
one
they did.
went up.
Well, they
and
went down in one category
And went up in the
another,
other, yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
that may be a good
And
thing.
I think the prior,
That could be a
the
good
interim library director might have been in that 1121, although she might be in the contracted services as well, so I'm not
Any
entirely
further
sure.
questions?
No.
Okay, continue, Vanessa.
So here's back to the proposed budget 13-14, and going through, in the notes, I kind of fleshed it out a little bit. I used the projections from Solano County for all of the property taxes, the property tax categories, and yes, unitary is a property tax category. I don't know specifically for what, but since I'm providing additional clarification in other categories, Mr. Cross, I will provide an explanation of unitary funds as well. In the next meeting, explanation. And so even though other agencies have predicted probably up to 2 to 3% increase in property taxes, I'm keeping it at what Solano County has projected for property taxes, which is a 1% increase. Measure B revenue, other agencies are predicting up to 3 to 3.5% increase. It probably would be Measure B/L revenue. I am kind of sticking with the projections for within the district completed by the City of Dixon budget analyst, which is around a 2.7% increase in property taxes within the district. So that's what I did for Measure B revenue. 2019 through 2021, you know, that was essentially an estimate based upon, a conservative estimate based upon prior year, but now that I know that there's a distribution out, then I can actually plug that exact amount in, and we could have a more accurate estimate as to what the library district will be receiving. So I'll do that.
But that'll be a one-time payment.
Yes.
And, yeah.
And are you
it's really
saying
a
that you would
capital-
rather we put it in a
And
capital?
it's a capital account.
And it shouldn't be
yeah.
put in the revenue category, okay, well then we'll move that. Okay, and, let's see, anything in addition, the grant revenue category is, expanded
So
significantly.
can we, just for clarification, can we get some definition on ABX1, ABX126 residual pass-through?
Sure, ABX 126, that's the, so Assembly Bill, it's the terminology for the dissolution of the redevelopment agencies and the committee that comes together. That's the ABX 126 committee is the committee that our representative Ian Arnold is on to determine what our share of the dissolution of the redevelopment agencies are going to be. So this is what the auditor.
This is a share of the new redevelopment that's being created, or this is the
there's-
share of the?
No, this
The
is
existing,
It's
the
a
ones that have been.
one-time payout for
Yes.
dissolution.
Yes.
One-time payout
I
for
think they're at
dissolution.
just selling the property of the old.
Does that come to us still in 13-14, or do we use that up in 12-13?
That should be on the capital side. I don't even think we should carry it as a as a line item here.
Okay,
That's my concern.
okay.
But,
But it will be for the upcoming fiscal year, and that will probably be the end of it.
it'll just be a
Yeah.
one-time.
That's
payment.
why you projected 30.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And,
There for now, it's gonna go away, Joe.
Okay,
We know it's there, we're not spending, we'll be aware.
all right.
the only other thing that is of note is that the grant revenue is increased just due to the fact that it's a $40,000 grant from the California State Library. We are receiving a $2,500 grant from a library consortium called Khalifa, another $2,300 from another organization, the California Center for the Book to Action, and I do project additional grant revenue as well, up to $10,000, just due to the fact that we've been pretty successful lately.
And, so should we be, Catherine, should we be thanking Catherine
Yeah,
for some of this?
absolutely, yeah.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah,
So,
yes, and everything else is consistent with the prior fiscal year, the projections, and that